And I'm going to pass this down to the first speaker. Who's the first speaker? And the speakers, Tyler has done a very clever random order so that we're not going to just go down the line. For each question, he's got people in order. And for the first one, it's Peter Dixon, who happens to be the first one in line.
It was randomized. That was not at all planned. Okay, so just to reiterate real quick, this is random for each one of these tranches. So we're going to kick it off. You're going to do 2 minutes. You've got your countdown. And then after Peter, Sam is going to be next. So I'll hand off a microphone to Sam. Peter, please introduce yourself. And stand, everyone, please, so the video camera can see you.
Thank you all for being here on a beautiful day and taking time to participate in your democracy. It's really important because I think what was just said, that this is an important year for Democrats and democracy, is absolutely true. On a lot of the debates that we've been all participating in, we're almost acting like it's business as usual. It's not. Democracy 100% is on the line. If Donald Trump comes in, our ability to preserve our democracy for future generations is very much in doubt. He'll use Schedule F. He'll use martial law in week 1 to take away those things that our founders feared most, being in the hands of a dictator. So what I have to offer is, because of my national security background, I know how to go to Congress and be a guardrail against that. I'm going to ask for not just your endorsement, but for your vote as well. That's an investment. And so the thing that I can offer you the most, and the reason that I'm doing this, is when you look at return on your investment, and you look at everything that Anna Eshoo was able to do for our district, given her long years of service, and her ability to be on the committees that mattered, and you look at those committees from a Ways and Means, from an Appropriations, right, and a House Armed Services. Because I'm a veteran, and because I have a history of actually getting things done on Capitol Hill, 6 members of the House Armed Services Committee have endorsed me. And I have a high likelihood of going on to that committee that deals with the majority of the flexible part of the budget. So that gives me an ability to be able to deliver for the district, deliver for Coastside. And I want to be able to do that, not just for all of us, but for the next generation. That includes my kids. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you.
And that is what 2 minutes sounds like.
Good afternoon. It is truly a beautiful day here. Thank you for being here when you could be outside enjoying this. My name's Sam Liccardo, and it's been said that democracy is about people showing up repeatedly. And despite the very grave challenges to our democracy in this country, clearly democracy is alive and well here in Half Moon Bay. So I want to thank each one of you for showing up. But democracy is also about government responding to people showing up. And unfortunately, in my experience in dealing with many members of Congress outside of our delegation, as a mayor of a city of 1 million people, I spent a lot of time in Washington. And I spent time talking to the president about gun violence. I spent time talking to members of the administration about how we can get veterans off the street who are homeless. But every time I went to Congress, I had a uniquely unhappy experience. And that whenever I talked about local issues that are addressing our region, around high housing costs, around high utility costs, around homelessness and gun violence and infrastructure needs, all too often I'd hear the response, those are local problems. Those aren't national issues. Those aren't federal concerns. Go back and solve them back home. And the problem was every other mayor, Republican and Democrat, would hear the same thing from members of Congress as well. But I think we all know better. These are federal concerns. We have a housing crisis in nearly every major metropolitan area in this country, and particularly acute here, to be sure. What we need from Congress is accountability. As a mayor of a city of 1 million people, I had to be accountable. It didn't mean I was always doing the right thing. It didn't mean I didn't make mistakes. But I had to be accountable to the needs of our residents. In my final year in office in 2022, we reduced street homelessness by 11%. We had reduced greenhouse gas emissions over the prior decade by 36%. We had ensured that we had the lowest homicide rate of any major city in the United States. And we expanded broadband to more than 200,000 of the lowest income residents of our city. I also delivered a $30 million surplus to my successor. That's the kind of accountability we need in Congress.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. It is an important part of our democracy. And I'm running for Congress, many of you have heard me say this, to ensure that the voices of those who've been silenced and sidelined can echo in the halls of Congress. And right now, this is more important than ever, as a special interest group has pledged hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to a candidate that is not here today. So it is important that you have somebody that represents you and your interests and the interests of our community, someone that has devoted their lives to doing so. And I am somebody who has done that over the course of my entire career. In undergrad, I was a student leader where I turned a red district blue by registering the most students to vote in the entire nation. After that, I worked as a teacher, teaching in inner city schools and helping people in Chicago. And while doing so, I also clerked with the Public Defender's Office representing those who are indigent. I then started a startup company to help women who were not being represented on social media. And after that, with my experience in law and my experience in tech, I worked at Google to be a global policy lead to protect on elections integrity and misinformation on the internet. My career has been about people, then people, then people. I have also worked as a pro bono attorney with Equal Rights Advocates, a national women's rights organization where I represented survivors of sexual violence and was awarded Pro Bono Attorney of the Year with them. So my career has not been about just, climbing the political ladder. It has been about you and serving you. So thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for coming out on a sunny day. I serve on the delegate slate with Aisha. It's wonderful to have gotten to know her in our efforts to be real participants in the Democratic Party in California. I want you to know that I came to California from Wisconsin, and I had also lived on the East Coast. I came here at age 17, came to Stanford, came over the hill one weekend and fell in love. I fell in love with this community. I fell in love with the Bay Area broadly, the sky, the politics, the people, and I fell in love with a guy who got down on one knee in the sand at the old chart house and proposed to me 34 years ago. So my heart is very much here on the coast side. Y'all, I root for humans. By that, I mean I believe in all of us. I'm a Mario Cuomo Democrat of old. When I was a kid, I heard him say, as Democrats, we believe no one wins the race as an individual. We don't win unless everybody crosses the finish line. I do believe that, and I try to live my life that way. I have had a career that has included practicing law and being a Stanford dean and serving on numerous nonprofit boards and writing nonfiction books, all in furtherance of trying to help humans thrive. And I'm also a mom. And it is the mom in me, probably more than any of those other roles, that has made me run for Congress, because I know that our youth are not thriving. I think it is the mark of a successful society that we create the conditions under which our youth can thrive. American youth today are afraid because of the climate that's on fire or underwater, because of gun violence that's been rampant since they were young, because of the cost of living that's completely out of whack. Rent's up here, wages and salaries are down here. They can't get health insurance, or if they can't find a healthcare provider because the wait's too long or it won't cover their meds. It's a scary time to be young. I'm running not for me, not for my generation, but for the youth of America. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Joby Bernstein, and I'm running to be your next congressman. We got here this morning at 8:30 a.m. I started off by leading a hike. We then did a habitat restoration and then some canvassing around the area here. I love this part of the district. I live in Palo Alto, but you can't tell people, but this is my favorite part. As a competitive swimmer, a surfer, a road cyclist, and a mountain biker, the coastline is special. The San Mateo Coast, in my opinion, is the prettiest coast we have in California, and I will be the representative who will be here to protect it. I'm running because I've watched the devastation that climate change has had on this state, from drought abroad, come here to study here, and then get kicked out because they lost a lottery for their H-1B visa. We are losing what is most important to us: our environment, our neighbors, and our children's future. But I know what we can accomplish. I want everyone to see the natural beauty of the state that I experienced on my first backpacking trip in the Sequoias 15 years ago. I want everyone to see the talent that can come here from abroad and innovate in this country. And I want everyone to be as inspired like my teachers have inspired me to aim for my highest dreams. Like you, I'm an innovator, a doer, and a self-starter who is going to Congress not to fight, but to make things right. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Joe Simidian. I'm running for Congress. And the question I get asked most often, and I'm guessing some of you have asked this question yourselves, is, why are you running for Congress? Particularly now, why are you running for Congress? And the answer to that question for me is to improve the lives of the people I represent, which I think is the only reason to run for office at any level. But particularly if you want to be a member of Congress and represent 750,000 people, you should be running to improve the lives of the people you aspire to represent. And as a member of Congress, I think there are at least 2 or 3 different ways you can do that. Yes, you legislate on the most compelling and important issues of the day. So a woman's right to choose and reproductive freedom, which is under assault, and we certainly can't count on the United States Supreme Court. So we need folks who are going to legislate to protect the right to choose reproductive freedom on a national basis. Climate change, what does it take to get Congress to act with a sense of urgency? Apparently, it takes members of Congress who are going to make that a priority, as I have done in my career to date and as I will do as your member of Congress. Healthcare, you on the coast know that healthcare isn't readily available or affordable to everyone who needs it in a moment of crisis or on a day-to-day basis. So those are the reasons that they are among the reasons I am running for Congress, to have an impact on the daily lives of the people I represent. Now, you can do that by legislating. You can also do it by being frankly, a guide to how to access various federal programs, various federal funding to help with the state and local part of the package. Because trying to make your way through that as a smaller community, particularly for our smaller unincorporated communities, if you don't have a member of Congress who's there to be your partner and your ally and your guide, good luck making your way successfully through the federal labyrinth. So that is also a role I would play. And even if it is state and local work, and a lot of the things that we're all concerned about on a day-to-day basis are, quote, technically state or local, it helps to have a member of Congress who understands the community and who understands that they need to be a partner and an ally and an advocate at the state and local level. As someone who has represented 14 of the 15 cities in this district, I am that person, and I hope you will come to see that during the course of the campaign, and that we will be partners together in the work ahead. Does it matter who your member of Congress is in your daily life? It does. Thank you very much. I'm County Supervisor Joe Simidian, and I look forward to representing you one day.
Hi, I'm Greg Tanaka. I serve on the Palo Alto City Council for the past 7 years. I'm on my 8th year now. My background is quite different than a lot of the people here. My dad never finished high school, but I was able, through hard work, able to go to Caltech and then Berkeley. I'm an entrepreneur, small business owner, and the reason why I'm running for Congress is really for you, for the people. I can tell you one of the big reasons why I'm running. How many of you guys ever experienced traffic on 92 coming here? Anyone? Okay, I did. I barely made it here. I just got here. I think we need to, there's a lot of traffic issues, a lot of parking issues, and we need to have mass transit along 92 to reduce the amount of traffic and parking issues that we have. So that's one of the big reasons why I'm running. And you can go to my website to see it. The second one is, does anyone here live on the coast? Does anyone here worried about their house falling into the ocean? Okay, there's sea level rise. Sea level rise is happening. A lot of houses are starting to crumble into the ocean. What is the federal government doing about this? What about the property that people have? This is the most valuable investment that most people have in their life, and it's starting to fall in the ocean. Where is the federal government in terms of putting levees and rocks and whatnot to prevent these properties from falling into the ocean? I think it's really important that we address the coastal erosion issue that this community faces. Is absolutely critical. And the last reason why I'm running is because I wasn't going to run. I was the last one to file to run for Congress. I was going to run. I thought, well, we have enough people running. But I ran for Congress because I saw what happened on October 7th. We saw people get murdered, raped, kidnapped, and I didn't see anyone else running on this platform to really make sure that we don't have anti-Semitism in our country. It's really critical. So those are 3 reasons why I'm running. Greg Tanaka, I look forward to having a discussion with you guys, and you guys are welcome to go to my website to see more detailed policies that I have. Thank you.
Great. Hello. There, thank you all very much. Okay, we're going to head into our first question here. The first person to answer is going to be Joe, followed by Julie. The question, Congresswoman Eshoo currently chairs the Health Subcommittee in the House and was previously the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, assignments both befitting the high-tech nature of the 16th District here. What are your legislative priorities, if elected, to support both the residents and the industries here in the fightin' 16th?
Joe Simitian again, and I mentioned as priorities reproductive freedom, climate change, and health care. And then the question is, yeah, but what are you going to do about all that? And the answer to that question, or set of questions, is we need to pass legislation right now, as soon as we have a Democratic majority in the House, that protects a woman's right to choose on a national basis. That needs to be the law of the land. There's at least one applause. There you go, thank you. The second comment I made is climate change. As I said, I guess I'm glad that there's a sense of urgency today, but I thought there was a sense of urgency a long time ago, which is why I led the effort in the California State Legislature and wrote the law that made California's renewable energy standards the most aggressive in the country. 33% at 2020, people said it couldn't be done. I said it not only could be done, it will be done, and it has to be done, and we got it done, and we did all that. Thank you, and I see we're down to a minute, so I've got 0 time left, and I'll pass the mic back. To be continued.
Julie, please, your legislative priorities, if elected.
As a representative of this region, I would long to be on the Commerce and Energy Committee. I think it's essential that Silicon Valley and the region's interests broadly be reflected and that people learn from us, frankly. I would want to be on the Judiciary Committee. I'm a member of the California Bar, and I very much respect the work of the Judiciary Committee. I would want to be on the Subcommittee of Health, Labor, and Human Services, because that's where my heart is. In terms of urgent legislative priorities, codify Roe versus Wade. A woman's right to control her body is imperative. We are under an existential threat as women, and I don't mean to overstate the case, but just look at what happened in Alabama this week. They would rather have a 12-year-old bear a child than an infertile couple be allowed to bear a child. It's atrocious. I also want to pass Medicare for all. I have never longed to be 65 more than when I was 54 and couldn't convince my health insurance company to cover the medication I needed.
As you'll be able to see on my website, I've actually written a book. I took some time at 3 in the morning when my patient wife was putting up with all my late night typing to write a book about my priorities. The 3 that, in addition to obviously all the things we need to stand for as Democrats, reproductive freedom, right to vote, there are many important critical priorities. I want to bring Congress home to address high housing costs, high utility costs, homelessness, and of course, climate mitigation. We know that we are all going to see very serious impacts from climate. We're seeing them already here in Half Moon Bay and throughout the district. One idea I have, for example, around how we can combine several of those critical issues is how we can help homeowners and apartment owners finance rooftop solar, batteries in the garage, the replacement of their gas heater with a heat pump to help reduce climate impacts and to make our homes more resilient to the changes that are coming in our climate.
Thank you.
People are struggling to live here in the Bay Area, whether that's housing and the cost of affordability for the common family or people who are commuting over an hour to go to work, or the people who are experiencing the devastating effects of climate change. Not too long ago, our skies were orange and we didn't know whether or not it was daylight. And we must prioritize issues where people can afford to live. And that starts with housing, environmental justice to ensure that everybody gets access to the electricity they need. And also the other thing that I would bring to the table is I'm the only one here who has experience in big tech over the last 5 years. I am tech literate and I can understand the harms of I can understand the harms of technology and AI, and I know how to mitigate them without stifling innovation.
Does anyone here enjoy doing their taxes? Anyone? Can you raise your hand, please? Okay, so we spend an inordinate amount of time on our taxes, something like 20 to 30, maybe sometimes 40 hours. And it's ridiculous. The IRS actually knows most information about people. For the majority of people, 80% of the people, they could send a tax return to you and you could click to accept. They should do that. This is what they do in Japan. This is what they do in a lot of other countries. But here in the United States, it's an IQ test. It's a burden for us. It sucks up a lot of money and time. It's not a good situation. So that's one of the things I like to push for. The other thing I like to push for is, does anyone here enjoy changing their clock back and forth every year? Okay, we have one person. But for the rest of you, this is archaic practice. It's time to modernize. People actually die because we change the times. People aren't used to it. It actually causes cardiac arrest. It's terrible. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for your health. So we should fix it. This is an archaic practice that has no bearing on a modern society. Thank you.
I really love this question because this drives to the heart of it. And this is a sophisticated question by a sophisticated crowd. I'm going to give you a sophisticated answer here. So first of all, I have some good news. You're going to get a Democrat as your member of Congress. So that's really good news. One of the people on the stage. Okay, so where's the downside risk? The downside risk is that after having a powerhouse, right, a powerhouse representing this district, you're going to have somebody who is facing 6 years as a backbencher in Congress because of the seniority system implemented by the Democrats. So again, one of the advantages that I have is to go beyond House Armed Services, and I could be marking up the National Defense Authorization Act next year. That's important for two reasons. That committee is where the majority of money is, and it is the only committee that passes a bill every single year.
My top 3 priorities: climate change, education, immigration. Because I only get a minute, I'm going to focus on climate. Too often people think that any Democrat can be an effective climate legislature, and that is just not true. You need to understand climate science. You need to understand environmental economics. You need to understand the problems that businesses are facing when they're trying to implement renewable energy. So how do we do that? I've worked on the Hill, and I've worked in 3 state legislatures on climate policy. I've led 2 corporate sustainability startups and been a climate investor at 3 different firms. I've seen firsthand why it takes some projects 4 to 8 years to be implemented onto the grid. I've seen the slowdowns, the permitting issues that continue to happen, and I've worked with Republicans before at trying to get climate legislation passed. We have such a short window to fix this existential problem, and the time to do it is today with the people who have the background and understanding where the problems are.
Great. Thank you all very much for that. We're going to go on to the second question, and it's going to be you, Julie, once I rush back to the podium and read it. Okay, here on the coast side, we just had the one-year memorial to honor 7 farm workers killed in a senseless shooting in January of 2023. How could you, if elected, help prevent such tragedies from happening again, not just here on the coast side, but throughout the U.S.? Julie?
This was a tragic event. I don't need to tell you that. What I want to say is a community shouldn't only get attention when tragedy has happened. I know how many people responded after the murder of George Floyd. All of a sudden, they cared about what was happening to Black people at the hands of law enforcement, and that interest has now waned after 3 years. I don't want that to happen to the farm worker community here. How to address it? People need to be treated with dignity and respect, period. Mental health issues matter. We need more mental health resources. I know there are terrific nonprofits that are providing mental health support. We need more federal dollars for mental health support. People are less likely to be struggling with their mental health and their sense of self if they're getting a decent wage. There are a lot of farm workers who are dealing with wage theft and are living in completely substandard conditions. So improve the quality of life of the people who are putting food on the table. That's one way to improve their mental health. We also need to pass an assault weapons ban and all the various gun legislation. I'm running out of time, but we need gun legislation as well.
I'm Joe Simidian, and I want to go right to the farm worker piece of the question. I appreciate the support and endorsement of the United Farm Workers in this race, alone among the candidates, and that is based on our work together through the years on a host of issues, but most particularly on farm labor housing issues, both in my current role as a member of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors and way back in the day in the private sector, working with San Mateo County to do the groundwork that ultimately produced Moonridge. Back when people, thank you, back when people thought farm labor housing, farm worker housing, really that's a thing? Yeah, it's absolutely a thing. And to the point that was just made by Julie and that's raised in the question, you got to go to the root causes. You got to go to the root causes. Mental health, I chair our county's health and hospital system. I am also an advocate first, last, and always for mental health, and I'm delivering real results for folks in the mental health world, which has been too long overlooked as part of the larger health community. Thank you. Microphone back to you.
Could you repeat the question? Just one more time, sorry.
Happy to repeat the question. The basic question is, how could you help prevent such tragedies, such as the farm worker shooting we had back in January 2023, from happening on the coast side as well as nationwide?
Yeah, not one more. That saying happened after the shooting at UC Santa Barbara 2 years after I graduated. My friends were deeply affected. Some of my friends actually witnessed some of the murders. And every day that we wait without having a solution to gun violence is potentially another life lost. We need responsible gun legislation, such as ending the gun show loophole. We need an assault weapons ban to ensure that these mass killing machines aren't in the hands of regular folks. Mass killing machines. And we need to also pass Ethan's Law. We need responsible gun legislation because it saves lives. It saves lives and has been proven to do so. California, we have urban populations and we have some of the strictest gun laws in the nation. We also have some of the best rates when it comes to saving lives in that respect. Thank you.
As Julie started out saying, no one should have to think about Half Moon Bay and associate it with a shooting. We should not, when we think about Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Parkland, these names, they continue to be remembered for the terrible things that happened there and not the beauty in those communities, and it is time to end that. We need to ensure that we can stop the fact that last year, 7,000 children were shot in this country and 1,600 died. We had 19,000 people were killed from firearms, and that's excluding suicides. Even last year, we saw that assault rifles were used more often in mass shootings then they were recorded to be used in self-defense. We need to take a lot more strict measures and fast to stop gun violence. Banning ghost guns, banning stabilizing braces, ensuring universal background checks. The list goes on and on. We have a lot of work to do, and it's time to start now.
In my tenure as mayor in 2022, I authored and we enacted the boldest gun control measure in the United States, one that requires insurance and fees, investing those dollars into violence prevention, domestic violence prevention, suicide prevention, mental health, targeting households where guns are kept. That is obviously working its way through the courts because, of course, the NRA didn't like it and we got sued by the gun groups. But so far, the U.S. District Court has upheld it, and we're going to continue that fight. In Congress, we need to obviously be mindful of the fact that it's a divided Congress and we need to first focus on what we can get passed. There's no reason why we can't close the loophole on background checks because we know there are Republicans who support that too. There's no reason why we can't extend background checks to ammunition and actually have reasonable constraints on the amount of ammunition that can be purchased because we know what happened, for example, in Aurora 2 days before the shooting when a gunman purchased 10,000 rounds. That shouldn't happen again. We need a federal red flag law. And the other part of the tragedy is the housing. We need to streamline the low-income housing tax credit program to enable affordable housing to be built in communities like rural communities that don't have matching funds so that we can get it built faster and more effectively.
Okay, the first thing that hopefully I've convinced you of is it's not enough just to be in Congress. You need to be on the right committee. The second thing I've hopefully convinced you is that the Armed Services Committee is one of those right committees. The third thing I'm going to work to convince you on is you have to be bipartisan and know how to get things done in a bipartisan way. I'm a veteran. I've not only carried an assault rifle in 2 wars, I've seen what an assault rifle does to a crowd of people, and our generation of veterans carries the physical and emotional wounds of those wars, which is why the nonprofit that I co-founded worked successfully to pass the first bipartisan gun control reform in decades. One of the 2 things, along with the women's right to choose, that everybody agrees you can't get anything done. We got something done, and we got it on Capitol Hill in a deeply divided Congress. We did that working with a veteran who's a Democrat who had Columbine in his district, and a veteran who's a Republican who had Uvalde in his district. That's how you get things done on Capitol Hill. Thank you.
So this is a serious issue. A lot of people got killed. I totally agree with my colleagues up here about gun control. We need to solve it, and it can be solved. But the second part that really wasn't addressed as much is mental health. So some of you might remember, but Ronald Reagan, he shut down a lot of our mental facilities. And what that did is it threw a lot of people on the streets. It's actually, if you look at the number of people that became homeless, it skyrocketed. As soon as those facilities shut down, it started to skyrocket. What we need to do is we need to reopen these facilities. We should have free mental health, where people who cannot live independently can get the help that they need so they could be free, they can live a good life, but not cause damage to themselves or others. And so that's actually critical. Mental health is one of the biggest issues that's causing homelessness, and it's certainly a big issue that caused the disaster to happen here. So we need to get on this. We need to reverse what Ronald Reagan did. If we do this, it will not just solve this issue, but it will solve a lot of other issues that we're having today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to go on to question 3. Sam, you're going to be the first one to answer this one, followed by Joby. So here on the coast side, our stretch of coastal communities are in a very precarious location between flammable hillsides and rising seas with only 2 escape routes. If elected, how could you help bring resiliency to the coast side?
Obviously, an important role of any member of Congress is to ensure dollars go to where they're most critically needed. And there's a lot of needs, I know, on the coast side. I've been hearing it loud and clear over many weeks in which this campaign has gone on. We have great threats, for example, to Highway 1, given what has happened now at Surfers Beach, and we got to accelerate the dredging in the harbor to ensure we can get sand over to Surfer Beach and protect Highway 1, because if that shuts down, we know it's going to happen to the economy. We need to make sure there is more reliable power supply because we know what happens at the Devil's Slide Tunnel when power goes out and there's no ventilation in the tunnel and it shuts down. Frankly, we just need more investment. I've certainly written extensively in this book of mine on my website, samlacardo.com, about how we can help homeowners and apartment owners be more resilient with their own power. We need public investment from the federal government to help us become more resilient, to protect our grid, and to ensure that these projects, whether it's dredging or keeping the roads open, have the dollars they need.
This community is one of the most climate vulnerable communities in the state. Right now, there was a Scripps oceanography study that came out last year that saw that in parts of Half Moon Bay and Pacifica, we're seeing about 16 feet of coastal erosion per year on some cliffs. That's 3 Jobies stacked on top of each other. It is a real issue that needs to be fixed. Sea level rise, expected to rise from 2.4 to 4.2 feet by 2100. Even here, the threat of wildfires, we're expecting to see 70% more land burned in the next 80 years. We need to take real action to protect the resiliency of our grid and resiliency of broadband. We need to continue to invest more in infrastructure, especially Highway 1 and Highway 92, to ensure that they are safe, they're reliable, and that we can fix congestion. This is the place where action needs to be taken, and I have seen these issues, I have studied them, I've looked at the models, and I know that now is the time to fight for this coast. Thank you.
Here again, this is a time when your member of Congress needs to be an advocate and an ally and a partner in making sure that federal funds are available to communities up and down the coast. The cost of addressing climate change, as we watch literally communities fall into the Pacific Ocean, is not a cost that any one community can afford to cover by itself. So you have to ask yourself, where might that money come from? And the answer is from BRIC funding that FEMA administers, that's building resilience infrastructure and communities. That BRIC funding comes through FEMA. That means you're going to need an ally and a partner in Congress who can help you access those funds, bring those funds to Half Moon Bay, Pacifica, the Mid-Coast, and by the way, understand that Half Moon Bay isn't Pacifica and Pacifica isn't Half Moon Bay, and neither one of them is the Mid-Coast. But that's where the funding will be to actually address the magnitude of the problem we all are facing here along the coast. Thank you.
Well, I know the Coastal Commission is suggesting a managed retreat, and I know the lady in the back is like, don't talk about the Coastal Commission. I understand it's not necessarily the most popular opinion. I respect that. I want to say that there's some federal legislation that's been proposed by our very own Anna Eshoo, the Smoke and Heat Ready Act. That's something we got to pass for communities like this one. The Coastal States Preparedness Act, Climate Preparedness Act, is something else we've got to do, and then bring those dollars home. I know that the pier was damaged recently up in Pacifica. It's on its way to repair. There's lots of stuff you all are dealing with on the coast as we speak around climate change and sea level rise and flooding. What I want to offer is whatever we can do at the federal level, whatever we can do with dollars, the greatest strength, the greatest offense, if you will, against it, the greatest defense, certainly, is the strength of our community. So ultimately, the cavalry is not coming. It's going to be on us here to figure out what is the best solution here and how we're going to support everybody in surviving and thriving in what's to come.
I believe the duty of a government is to keep people safe. That's the number one duty. We need to keep people safe. And this community is between fire and the ocean. That's a tough place to be. And that's why I'm the only candidate, if you read my ballot statement, I'm the only candidate in my ballot statement where I talk about we need to solve the coastal erosion. We need to have a seawall. We can't let the ocean just keep cutting away at the coast. That's not acceptable. It's the government's responsibility to make sure that people's property is safe. It is critical. That's also why I had in my ballot statement why we have to improve the transportation to this community. We need to improve 92, to have mass transit along 92. That was also my ballot statement, because I believe that we need to be able to give people a way out, We need to make sure that people's property are safe. We need to make sure that people don't get burnt to a crisp when the fire's happening. It's really, really critical. So I encourage you guys to go to my website. I have a lot of details around all of these different policies, around mass transit along 92, about how we're going to solve the coastal erosion issue. So please, I invite you to check that out, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Show me the money. So hopefully I've convinced you that unlike most folks, right, and not just on the stage, most politicians, most congressional candidates, I have a chance to get on the right committee in year one and immediately be making a difference for this community. What I said, show me the money, matters for that committee. So the defense spend, most of which never gets to the troops, is $150 billion more than everything else combined of the discretionary taxpayer dollar. It is the majority of the money. Joe, I would love for you to prove me wrong on there being enough money in FEMA to handle this, but when you look at the demands on FEMA across the country, that pot of money is getting pulled too many different directions. I can take $50 billion out of the defense spend through simple modernization and send it back to the communities it came from. That can go into the Army Corps of Engineers so that they can do the managed retreat or coastal walls in order to protect this community without this community having to pay for it.
Nobody knows this better than you, that climate change is not a problem of 2050, 2040, or even 2030. It's a problem of now and today. You know, I've seen, 92, the sinkhole that shut down that road for almost 9 months. Nobody knows about the erosion better than you do, and the rising tides better than you do. And that's why we must pass legislation like the Green New Deal for cities. It's a component that actually gives the cities and the local officials the money to be able to handle the issues themselves, to know where the problems are, rather than the federal government telling you what to do and where to do with the money. Instead, we must empower our local communities, and we must do so because you know the issues better than anyone else. And the other piece of it is, besides you all, the people who are consistently affected with climate change are those who are most vulnerable. And so we must have good and strong legislation like the Justice 40 initiative and the Green New Deal for cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you all for that brief interlude. Ahmed, hopefully you still have the microphone. You're going to be up next for this one, and then Peter, you're going to be second. We hear so much right now about immigration, that the current system is broken. How do you see the issue, and what could you do to help if elected?
Yeah, the current system is broken. And it's broken not because of what you're hearing in Washington. It's broken because it lacks a humanitarian lens. Right now, we forget as Democrats sometimes. We have short-term memories. We were just talking about children in cages a few years ago. The solution is actually to do what we were supposed to do a few years ago, which is pass and codify the DREAM Act. To actually, within the DREAM Act, enact DAPA as a part of it to protect parents of immigrants. And although many people have forgotten about this, we must expand our asylum laws to those who are suffering from persecution, not just from countries. Like our asylum laws are written based on World War II. Things have changed. So we must protect those who are suffering from persecution from criminal organizations like the cartels and from climate change with the islands that are sinking. I've seen the worst stories happen. I've seen a woman get turned down after being sexually assaulted, not in the United States, but in another country, and go back to her abusers. And that's something that, as the United States, we must stand on, and we must change. So thank you.
I'll just echo that and say immigration is not our weakness as a country. It's our strength. I had folks that served overseas with me in Afghanistan and in Iraq who had come to this country and either gotten their citizenship or their green card. but believed so much in the American dream that they signed up to fight in the Marines. And 2 of them lost their lives and didn't come home. You look at any startup here in the Valley that it's worth its salt, and it looks like the United Nations. And that's because that's what makes this place go, that you can come from any place with a big idea, with a big dream. You can find people who think the same way and get together, and we get made fun of for it, but go out and actually change the world, and we do. And so if we lose that, we lose what makes Silicon Valley in this area magical. I'll also just agree with you. My mother works on this for women from South America, and even if they have been suffering violence in their home countries, that is not reason enough for them to stay here. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Thank you.
I'm going to go a little bit personal. I had grandparents who fled violence as ethnic Armenians and came to this country because they could. And they lived and worked in a 2-room tailor shop where they raised my father, my Aunt Virginia, pulled the curtain down at night, brought out the cots. They struggled, but they made it. And then that meant my father could go to college for free on the GI Bill and become a public school teacher. And then that meant I could live a decent middle-class life, go to great schools, go to law school really for free at UC Berkeley back in the day, grab a graduate degree at Stanford along the way, and then another over at UC Berkeley. That's the American dream as we believe in it, as it should be, and it isn't the American dream for too many folks who call this place home. You want to know who I am and what I'm about? That's who I am and what I'm about, and that's what I'm going to work on when I get to Congress and represent all of you. Thank you for letting me share a little bit.
We can have both. We can have a secure border and a fair immigration system. I'm a descendant of Mexican and Italian immigrants who did not come here legally. There are many of us here, and there are 12 million neighbors among us who have been living here for decades, working, building families, building communities, and building futures we deserve to ensure they have a future with a path to legal status and citizenship. We must protect our dreamers and their parents. That's why I led an effort among many cities to sue the Trump administration when he threatened dreamers back in 2017, I believe. And we should ensure that we staple a green card to the diploma of every college graduate in this country if they don't already have status. Why would we want to send them back to another country to compete against us? Let's have them on our team. We have great opportunities with immigration. Let's embrace them.
This country is a nation of immigrants. My great-grandfather came from Japan in 1880. They came as farmers. My dad, as a kid, he used to pick cotton in the field. This nation needs farm workers, people to pick the fruit, the cotton, the strawberries. And what I think we should do in our country is have a much more permissive work visa. So my wife is from Hong Kong, and in Hong Kong, anyone that wants to get a job from anywhere can apply for a work visa, and it's basically automatic. You don't need to spend $10,000 on an immigration lawyer. You don't need to sneak across the Rio Grande. It's basically transparent and easy, and that's what we should do. We should make it where if there's a job available, somebody could do the job, automatic visa. We should make it easy. If we do that, we're not going to have the issue we're having today. Instead, we'll have a nation of hardworking people who want to contribute to our society. So our country really should make it easy, because it used to be easy. It's hard now. We have all these barriers. And by making it easy, we reduce the cost of our goods in our country. We're also making it a lot more fair to the people coming here. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure the Statue of Liberty still holds those tablets that say, "Bring me your tired, huddled masses." And I hope that representation of what America stands for will always be in New York Harbor. But man, look at what the Republicans doing, and you have to wonder. What's happening on the southern border with Republicans treating migrants seeking refuge here as a political football is unconscionable. It is It is treating human beings with far less than dignity. It absolutely disgusts me, and I know it disgusts many of you. I drove to the southern border when they were holding the migrant kids in cages. I led a 5-day protest there, and at the end of those 5 days, Democratic candidates for president, Kamala Harris and Julian Castro, flew in to give a speech about that issue because we had drawn attention to it. I know that people seeking refuge need a better asylum process, and I will fully fund that process so people can have dignity and status while they wait for their decision.
Two of my volunteers, Timo and Amy, here today. They're not American. They came here to study. They plan to stay here. They want to become Americans and invest in our community. But too often, every single year, we are worried about them getting a visa, not winning a lottery, and getting kicked out of this country. And it makes no sense why the smartest minds in this country who come here and want to study here and stay here, we decide by a lottery if they should get to stay here. Right now, if you have a PhD and you live in India and you want to come to this country, it's a 134-year waiting period to get in. It does not work. And it's part of the reason why, when you look at our border crisis today, it looks very different than 10 years ago when I worked on Capitol Hill. We are seeing tens of thousands of Indian citizens and Chinese citizens who are crossing the border illegally and getting apprehended. So we need to first fix legal immigration in order to ensure that we can have comprehensive immigration reform.
Thank you all, thank you. So for our fifth question, this is going to be news to you, Barbara. We're going to give them 2 minutes to answer instead of 1. It's a very important question, and it also happens to be the last one before your summations. So on to this question. Peter, you're going to be the first one to answer. Here on the coast side, we see the impacts of the housing crisis from tents along our wetlands to RVs along Highway 1. How could you steer the federal government to assist California in providing affordable housing and controlling housing costs?
Thank you for that. I think this is the first, second, and third issue. If we look at homelessness, if we look at traffic, all of this is connected back to the lack of housing that we have in the area. Okay, so I'm trying to lay out a very logical case here for why I make sense to be your next member of Congress, where I have talked to you again about how I can be on the right committee, how I can free up $50 billion from the defense spend, and I can send it back to the district into places like the Army Corps of Engineers to work on coastline issues. The other place that I would send that money out of the $608 billion defense spend, where there's a 94% failure rate around weapons programs right now, it's in drastic need of reform. Okay, so one of the places that money should come back to is, and this will make sense in a second, the military bases in the Bay Area that were abandoned 20 or 30 years ago. Some of them have been turned over well. Many of them are still environmental cleanup sites that have not had the appropriate resources dedicated to them. And this is some of the largest available land in some of the key places in this district. That includes Moffett Field, but it's 15 other places as well, like Hunters Point. Right? So if we are able to dedicate the appropriate resources to them, we can build not just tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of quality units and homes that can be owned, and we can stop nibbling around the edges on this and actually solve it in a meaningful way. This matters. We're turning over our tax base right here. Young people are moving away. Restaurants are closing early. This is the issue for the community. And when it comes to, for instance, our farm workers here, I spent 6 months living in a shipping container, but that was as a Marine in Afghanistan. You shouldn't come here to this country and have that be the case. We can and must do better.
Housing is a human right, and we must stand by that. And to solve the housing crisis, we have reasonable solutions. We must increase the housing supply. So whether that's using federal land or using unoccupied buildings, which are empty, we must find different ways to increase that supply. And when we do so, if we do so with federal lands, we can actually establish and build green transportation for people to use to go to their jobs. And that will not only solve parts of the housing crisis, it'll help with the environment, and it'll also reduce congestion. We also must support rent control and first-time buyers to make people able to live in the places that they grew up in. Now, this is a challenge. Like for me, as a young person, I grew up in Menlo Park, and it took years for me to be able to rent a place here. Years, and law school, and paying off parts of my law school debt. So, and I can't even think of how to buy a house in the Bay Area right now. I'm just like, oh my gosh, maybe if I get married, that could help potentially dual income. But right now it's impossible. I'll also say that housing is an intersectional issue and we must look on it and not forget some of our most vulnerable communities. And one of the most vulnerable communities that we forget about are our sisters, our mothers who are abused. The Violence Against Women Act actually protects housing for women, and it's something that is not often talked about. The provisions that protect the housing always are set to expire. So right now they're set to expire in 2027. And it's about time we have leadership that makes those provisions permanent, because I have seen the devastating effects directly of my clients going from women's shelter to women's shelter after they've been abused. In the worst ways, they come here on a fiancé visa, so they don't get a social security number because their husbands don't let them work. And then they can't even work after they're kicked out of their homes. And nobody is there to support them because they don't understand the language. And so we must have more innovative solutions and look at it intersectionally. Thank you so much.
I think I have failed to say thus far that I'm a member of the Palo Alto City Council. And I ran to serve on Palo Alto City Council because, quite frankly, Palo Alto was a leader in building affordable housing back in the 70s when it was a relatively new concept. And then decade after decade after decade, our leaders grew afraid of constituents who didn't want more housing built. And I was tired of it, and I finally decided to step up and do something about it. So housing is very much at the root of everything, a lack of housing. It is a federal issue, but much of it gets handled locally. And nobody gets that better than a local city council person, some of y'all are in this room, who know what the battle is like. I am proud that in Palo Alto, my colleagues and I, and Greg is one of them, we are working to help our community understand why this is a pressing social justice issue, and why, if they've got signs in their yards that speak to social justice around what's happening in America, don't overlook the issue that's happening right here in Palo Alto, a lack of housing. We are moving the needle. We are having constituents coming to public comment and say they want more housing. They want to raise the height limits. They want greater density. This hasn't happened by accident. In order to get a community to vote differently, you got to educate people first about what's at stake. So I am proud of what I'm doing as a local elected on housing, and we have to do that across the nation. So changing the will of the people is one piece. Another piece is bringing the cost of building the darn stuff down. It's like $800,000, $900,000 a unit in Palo Alto. But there's some innovative folks who are working on prefab and modular housing. They're doing it in Arizona. They're bringing a project here to Monterey, a little bit south. And we're going to see if we can cut those costs in half. And we need dollars from the feds. Dollars for Section 8 vouchers, dollars for transitional housing for the unhoused, and dollars for extremely low income housing, and I will bring those dollars home. Thank you.
Two great challenges of our age are the growing divide between richer and poor, and of course the climate crisis. And there's no greater manifestation of this growing divide than the housing crisis that is faced by large metros and the Bay Area, and of course here in the Coastside. As mayor of the city of San Jose, I led an effort to increase the taxes on large land transactions by corporations in 2020 called Measure E that ultimately generated nearly $100 million in 2021 alone. That's money we'll continue to use to build affordable housing and to address our significant crisis of homelessness. But we need a federal partner. We need a federal partner to lean in because we haven't seen significant change in federal housing policy in decades. Vouchers are the most powerful tool we have to help extremely low-income people find housing. But I can tell you, when cities like San Jose, and ultimately then later Mountain View and Redwood City, build transitional housing just as Julie described, quick build, prefabricated housing that can be built in a fraction of the time of the $1 million a unit apartment buildings that get built in the Bay Area that take 5 or 6 years to build. We can build them in 5 or 6 months in the city of San Jose at $80,000 a unit, and we can't use a single federal voucher in any of those projects, nor can Mountain View or Redwood City or anyone else, because of restrictions in the federal law. So I want to eliminate those hindrances in federal law that prevent us from being able to use federal programs more effectively to address our crisis. Yes, we need more vouchers. We also need, as I mentioned before, a streamlined low-income housing tax credit program, which is only used today by big cities like San Jose that have matching dollars to be able to leverage those large federal tax credits to help build affordable housing. We need them to be made available to the many communities that don't have those large sources. Obviously, rural communities and unincorporated areas in Coastside stick out most primarily in mind. I see I'm out of time. Thank you.
Both times I ran for Palo Alto City Council, I ran on a platform of affordable housing. It is important, it is critical. And one thing that's really interesting is if you look at the average size of the American family over the past few decades, it's actually been getting smaller. So we have less kids, and also a lot of families, they get divorced or whatnot. So the family size is getting smaller. So family size is going like this. But then if you look at the housing size, the amount of square foot per person, it's going up. It's going like this over the past few decades. And so the amount of square foot per person is astronomical. It's going exponential. And that's one of the big reasons why it's really expensive, is because we just simply have bigger houses. And it's one of the easiest ways to actually solve some of the affordability is actually to have smaller units. So let's say if you're a bachelor, you're just starting out. Do you need to have a 3,000 square foot house? Probably not. If you're a senior citizen, I know my parents, they would love to move to downsize, to move to a smaller units, but they don't want to move outside the community. They have a network of people here in the community. They want to stay there. So we need to have affordable housing for seniors. So people who want to stay in the community that they built their family can actually stay there. The second big issue is that we talked a little bit about like using empty buildings. So as you probably know, a lot of commercial buildings, because of the work from home policy, a lot of these office buildings are empty. It's actually a crisis in commercial real estate. We should take advantage of this crisis to actually make this office buildings available for housing. We could have policies in place to allow for the conversion of these office buildings to housing. And okay, yeah, so I don't know where we are right now in terms of time. Okay, and then the second prong of this is transportation. If we had really good transportation, the housing is a lot less of an issue because you don't have to live right next to the place you work. So this is why I advocated for mass transit along 92. This would bring the people here without causing a lot of traffic and alleviate the housing issues. Thank you.
Sorry, we had a little timer malfunction there. You ready? Okay.
So as you heard earlier, I'm a big hiker myself, and unfortunately there is nowhere that I can walk from where I live in Palo Alto to be able to afford a house that I could buy. It is extremely expensive to live here, but also rent is a real issue as well. Right now, 1 in 9 Californians are behind in rent. We're also seeing that around 25% of renters in this area are rent stressed, which means that around 50% of their income is going towards paying for rent. So we need to fix this with more housing and more density. And I think there are 2 main channels that we need to focus on. The first is innovation, and the second is in policy. When it comes to innovation, I used to work for a climate real estate venture capital firm, It is amazing seeing the innovation that is going to be coming in this district. Whether it's prefab, instead of having to build a home for $800,000, prefab companies in this district alone are building homes at under $200,000. We are seeing the future of green cement and green steel, which are half as much as emission. Through acts like the Inflation Reduction Act, we will continue to see the benefits of this innovation here at home. And then the second, when it comes to policy, we need to ensure that we can improve public transportation, we can fix zoning laws, remove minimum parking laws, and make sure that both SEQA and NEPA, I'm a climate scientist policy nerd. I've seen too often, though, climate policy get weaponized against individuals in this district, and it is time to fix that as well. So let's focus on innovation, let's focus on our policy to fix affordable housing here at home.
I think we have to start with an acknowledgement that without a roof over your head, the rest of it is just conversation. We can't aspire to be all that we want to be if we don't have that secure foundation. Again, to get a little bit personal, I started my life off in a government housing project called Roosevelt Towers in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It is exactly what it sounds like, a housing project. And probably most of the folks in this room wouldn't choose to live there. But at that point in my very young life and my single mom's life, it was the place we could get some stability and chart a path to a better future. So I have a very real and tangible sense of just how important this is. Fast forward, all these years later, I've done something with that. As a county supervisor, I'm building teacher housing right now for not just teachers, but educators in the workforce. It is under construction as we speak because great communities require great schools require great teachers and school staff, and if people have to live 2 hours away from the place where they work, they can't be there for kids and do the job the way they want to do it. I am literally building housing for people with developmental disabilities because this is a group that has been too often overlooked as a matter of policy, but also as a matter of community concern. We are building housing for farm workers in Santa Clara County because there's an ag economy in South County that depends on it, just as there's an ag economy right here that depends on a workforce, to go back to the tragedy we discussed earlier. So, and that means that if you say you care, you have to do more than say you care. You have to step up and deliver. At the federal level, that will mean, yes, more dollars, hard to come by. Yes, it'll mean taking a housing policy that's rooted in the 1950s and bring it into the 21st century. And finally, it'll actually take convincing people in Washington, D.C. that there ought to be some acknowledgement of the high cost of living of some parts of the country, this place in particular. A hard sell, but something that we have to push on if we're going to make more progress. Thank you.
Thank you. There you go. Sorry, we had a small little timer mishap here. We're going to take a small 1-minute break here.
Where's reset? Oh, you just started again? Sorry.
Just hit start
Start
again.
that one.
Yeah, you can just hit that one.
That one?
You can hit the green button right there. That's a 2-minute right there.
Oops, it started.
No. I think we've got it back on track. Oh, wait.
But it would have to be here. We have to make it like. The press on the middle class, the homeless, the insurance problem. It's really politically troublesome, but we've got to start thinking in terms of balancing it so that we get that well properly addressed. Thank you.
Okay. If we move the timer down here, is everyone going to be able to see it?
I can stand.
If we stand, is that going to be viewable by everyone? Is that good there? Over here? Okay. There we go. Okay, we are back on track. Thank you all. We're actually running a little ahead of schedule, I think, because it looks like one of our RSVPs did not make it. So we've been sort of accommodating that, and it's been giving us a little extra time. So we're going to toss in, I know I lied.
I don't know that I talked on this one.
Oh, did you not? Where is my, You know what? I'm sorry. It was not intentional to leave you out. I apologize. Peter did not get a chance to speak, so let's have Peter speak. Then we're going to do one more question. Then we'll do the summations. Okay.
Was this, sorry, this was on how
This was on
the
the-
first one to go.
You were the first one to go. There you go. See, I lost my sheet. I lost my tracking sheet. There we go. I think there's a certain amount of eagerness that one wants to see in a candidate, and I'm okay with that. I really am. Okay, so I'm going to get my tracker back since it doesn't. Yes, you were the first one to go. I can see that right here now. Okay, here we go. Again, eagerness is a good thing. This is going to be a 1-minute question. This is going to be a 1-minute question, and I'm going to reuse one of my random orders because we weren't planning on having this many questions, and so we're going to kick it off first with Sam. Okay, and here we go. Acknowledging up front that education isn't necessarily a federal issue, more of a state issue, but still there's a federal component. Here in the Coastside, we feel our schools need help. We really do feel they need assistance. We're hoping that you might be able to talk about any way you could think of that you could bring educational resources to this area if elected. Sam?
And going back to my experience as a mayor of a city of 1 million people, we didn't have responsibility explicitly for schools either. We had 19 school districts that did, but I made it my mandate to do everything we could to serve underserved students, including launching after-school and summer reading programs in 16 poorest neighborhoods in my city, ensuring we could launch a program that helped 1,700 of our students in our poorest high schools carve a path to college with micro-scholarships, and a host of other programs, including expanding broadband to more than 200,000 residents in my city. What the federal government can do is fill in all those spaces that we know, for example, with broadband access. We know that too many underserved students are not getting a fair shake. We need a federal government that's leaning in to help, for example, with affordable housing, to support teachers and administrators who are struggling to afford to live here. Oh, I see we're out of time. All right, thank you.
When it comes to education, one area where the federal government can play a role and has played a role is in pre-K. And I think it is time for universal pre-K in this country. 13 years is not enough when it comes to education. There was a recent study done that found that for every dollar invested in pre-K, we saw $7.30 of benefits given to this country, whether that's in increased wages, increased health, and more labor force participation. When we have universal pre-K, we ensure that we can boost labor force participation rates, ensure that parents can get back to the workforce sooner. We've seen for students that have gone to preschool, they are more likely to take honors classes, get higher test scores, even have better mental health. There are so many benefits that can be seen with investing early on, and now is the time to invest there because it is the highest return on investment that we have available for federal dollars today.
I agree with Joby. Early childhood education is and where it should be at, and I say that as the member of the California State Senate who wrote the law that created transitional kindergarten here in California, the first new grade level in California in more than 100 years. It's about not only seeing the need, but having the ability to then respond to the need and actually develop consensus across party lines and deliver those programs. So you don't have to convince me of the importance of early childhood education. I've been there, done that at the state level for 40 million Californians, and I look forward to doing it on a national level as well. Having said that, I'm a former school board member, chaired the budget subcommittee on education finance in the state legislature, served in the education committee. There's a Department of Education for a reason, and it's to protect the civil rights of every kid in this country and to focus limited federal resources on the lowest income kids who need our help that much more. That's what I think about early childhood education. Thanks, Joby, for teeing that up. Appreciate it.
I love how we listen to each other and learn from each other. We have no shortage of talent on this table. As the daughter of a public school teacher, right? Okay, don't let me take my time away if you applaud. Okay. As a daughter of a public school teacher, my mom, I know how essential a quality public education is. I'm the product of public education and have sent my 2 kids to public education, K through 12. I commend you for Measure O. Now you got to go vote for Measure G. I love what you're doing locally to ensure your schools are stronger than the state would otherwise allow them to be. There is a federal need for universal pre-K. I applaud that. However, our real problem here is the state of California, Prop 13, 1978, eviscerated public school funding. A wealthy community like where I live, Palo Alto, solves it by having a private foundation ask families for thousands of dollars per child. I find that unconscionable, un-American, and undemocratic, and I have said so in my own city. I will fight hard for your schools to be as well funded as those in Palo Alto, Woodside, Atherton, etc. This is a social justice issue.
This question hits home personally for me. As I mentioned, my dad never finished high school, so we grew up relatively poor. I kind of grew up in the hood, so to speak, and definitely the school there was not very good. So we have a very uneven amount of funding going to different schools and quality. We need to have equal opportunity for all. That's really critical. So the federal government needs to step in when it doesn't happen. But the second thing that's also really important is that we make sure that we get the best teachers possible. And what we should be doing is we should be giving performance bonuses to amazing teachers. We want to incentivize the best and brightest in our community to go out there and become teachers to help educate the future. Because the future is what's going to determine how good this country is. And the last thing I think that's really critical is, I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of Khan Academy, some of you? Okay, a lot of kids use it. And one thing that they did was they saw that if you have a one-on-one tutorial for kids, people have 2 standard of deviation improvement in quality of education. And the great thing is with AI technology, you actually have this one-on-one tutoring service. So that's kind of like the third thing that we should be doing. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room worked as a teacher? Great. Yeah. So it's exhausting. And increasingly, teachers spend a large amount of their time dealing with 1 or 2 kids in the class that are really struggling, not just with learning, but with emotional and behavioral health, especially after COVID. One of the things that we did, that the nonprofit I co-founded did in a bipartisan way, was increase the Uniform Public Health Corps under the Surgeon General during COVID. When teachers went on strike in Oakland, the thing that they were asking for most was more nurses in the school system. So one of the main priorities that I want to use that $50 billion that I intend to free up every single year out of the defense budget is to increase the size again, like we did previously, of the Uniform Public Health Corps to provide those services to the kids, our kids, who desperately need it. Thank you.
We need to fund dreams, and that means funding pre-K through higher education. When we invest in our education, we're directly investing in our future and our economy long term. And I've seen the devastation of what happens in cities that fail to protect public schools. I've seen Chicago, where 92% of the school population were people of color. And so what happens when you divest from public education? You divest directly from people of color. And it's a devastating effect on how those people see themselves, how people see themselves when they're not funded and they're not invested in. And when we do so, we directly invest in our dreams as people. We tell people that it is possible for you to do anything that you can, and we need to reform our education to include coding, to include pieces of education that are traditionally not being taught right now that will allow people to succeed all the way up through higher education. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, these folks have answered a lot of really great questions. We are now going to go into the summation period. We're going to start with Julie. This was a random selection, I swear. take a second to gather yourself. Each candidate is going to get 2 minutes to summarize the points they would like to make to those of us here in the Coast Side, the reason they're going to run, just why they decided to come today. We're stalling because we're resetting the timer. And I believe we're ready. Julie, would you like to start the summations for us, please?
Tyler, this is not the time I wanted ladies first. I wanted to gather my thoughts and put together a glowing talk for you that would take 2 minutes, but instead I'm looking at my hastily scribbled notes. Really what I want to do is just try to speak from my heart. Strong candidates, a lot of places have trouble fielding one good person. And we have an embarrassment of riches in this richest of districts, right? You've got a lot of great choices. It may seem like there's not a lot of daylight between us. So I wanted in my final minute and 24 to try to pry things apart a little bit so you can see more clearly. It may be obvious, in case it's not, I'm the only woman in the race. I'm running against 10 men to replace a congresswoman. I love men. I love going toe-to-toe with men. But I think in this American moment, you have to ask yourself, does gender matter? And I'm going to make the case that it does. Did you know that women are 29% of Congress right now? Okay? Not close to 50%. They just turned over Roe versus Wade. Alabama is calling embryos children. Now is not the time to be lessening our representation at any level of government. Okay? I'm sorry if I sound angry. I'm just passionate. I care about our rights as women. Now is the time to be increasing female leadership in government and every other place. So gender does matter. I am also not a career politician. And I think if I were you, I would be asking my career politicians, where's the housing? Where's the funding for our schools? Where is the infrastructure support? Career politicians sometimes, perhaps often, have to compromise for dollars and votes. I never have, and I never will. I'm a fighter. I ask for your support. Julie Lithcott-Hames for Congress, www.julie.vote. Thank you.
So thank you all for making it out here today to listen. Democracy, though, in itself is not just a spectator sport. I ask that everyone take a chance to see who you want to support, but then try to go and do more. Grab our yard signs, sign up to volunteer with us, canvass with us. 2 candidates make it on to the next round, so you can even grab 2 yard signs of different candidates. I am running because I have a background in climate. I've seen coastal erosion here. I have studied the issues in depth, and I have a lot of research-backed policies that have gotten bipartisan support that I know that we can get done to make a significant difference. When it comes to immigration, we know that $98 million along the coast are agriculture that is largely farmed from immigrant workers. We need to pass the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. It's gotten bipartisan support before, it just wasn't reconciled. It is time to see stuff like that get passed. And in education, we have seen the school district here continue to face insolvency issues. It is time for us to continue to find ways to provide more funding to schools. I am young, I'm 28, I'm tireless, I'm competitive, and I'm thoughtful. And why would you want to put a young person in office? Alexander Hamilton was 21 years old when the Declaration of Independence was signed. James Madison was 25 years old. The Constitution itself was written by founding fathers who were in their early 30s. And throughout American history, each new generation has risen to the challenges. Whether it was from world wars to COVID, we have risen up to fight those problems. And for those people who think now is the time to throw in a towel on American democracy, I am more motivated than ever. I'm here because instead of leaning back and criticizing the way things are, I'm gonna fight to make sure that they're the way that things should be. I'm Joe B. Bernstein, I'm running for Congress, and I'm running for you. Thank you.
Now is not the time to throw in the towel on democracy. I'm going to piggyback on Joey's comments again. Now is the time to say, in these daunting times, we need a experienced and accomplished, proven legislator who has shown that he or she looks to the future always, gets ahead of the curve, then, after listening to and working with the community, devises real solutions and puts them in place. And he or she needs to be a real Democrat. So let me be clear about this. I am a member of my county's Democratic Central Committee. I am a member of the state Democratic Central Committee. I know what a Democratic club is. I know you're going to vote on an endorsement, and I want to ask for your support and endorsement. Just as I asked Congresswoman Anna Eshoo and Jackie Spear for their endorsement, and they both said yes. They have endorsed my candidacy, as have all 5 members of the Half Moon Bay City Council, a majority of the council members in Pacifica, because they said, this is a person who actually knows our communities, have represented 14 of the 15, has looked to the future, has delivered solutions, and actually can and will do the work. All of us can offer soaring rhetoric. All of us can make promises. Some of us have the ability to say, I saw the problem, I developed the solution, I built consensus, I got it done. That's how I have done my work. It's how I'm doing my work today, and it's how I hope to represent you all in Congress. There are a lot of different facets to this job. Social justice, Joe, that's where the UFW came from. Sierra Club, Joe, that's the endorsement I have that is a testament to my work on the environment. The San Mateo County Asian American Pacific Islander Alliance, that's the group that said, you know what? This guy understands that we're in a diverse society and it's the 21st century and we all got to pull together. And finally, respect the time limit, Joe. That's the guy who says, joesimidian.com. I hope I can get your support, your vote, and please take a yard sign on the way out. Thanks a lot.
So, Greg Tanaka, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for the club for putting this on. I think it's really critical. This is a summation of my background, small business owner, been serving on the Palo City Council for many years now. And why vote for me? Main reason to vote for me is think about the issues I prioritized. From my ballot statement to my opening statement, I'm focused on the people that I would represent. I don't think anyone else here put on a ballot statement the issue around coastal erosion, the fact that we need a seawall, the fact that we need to have a fire break to prevent this place from burning up. I don't think anyone else put on the ballot statement that they were worried about traffic on 92. I personally experienced the traffic on 92 just now, as maybe some of you guys have. We need to solve this issue, right? It's an issue that impacts the small businesses here that need tourists to survive. It impacts the people that live here that need to work in Silicon Valley. It impacts everyone. It impacts safety. It's possible we should build either BART here, or I think you guys probably saw some news about maybe an aerial tram. But there's many ways of doing something like this to, I got a clap, thank you. Aerial tram, but there's many ways to provide mass transit, because that 2-lane twisty road, which is it's like the main connecting to this beautiful area, needs to be better, right? It's going to be hard to build a big wide freeway there without really hurting the environment, but there's more gentle environmental ways of doing it. So we really need to have mass transit to the space that can provide the shopping dollars, it can provide the transportation for people that work here, for the people that live here, for the people that want to visit the beach here, to enjoy the amazing coast that we have in California. We need to do this. So when you guys have a lot of great choices here, but you have to think who here is prioritizing the people that they represent. A lot of people are talking about these big, glorious issues, but what about for the people that we represent? Who is representing you? So I do have lawn signs. Go check out my website, gregtanaka.org, and I'll bring lawn signs here. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Ahmed Mustafa, and I'm running for Congress to ensure that your voices can echo throughout the halls of Congress. I want to start off with a deeply personal story. You know, a few years ago, my grandfather came to visit me. I'm the child of immigrants, and my grandfather still lives in Egypt, but he couldn't qualify for the travel insurance. And I found him on my bed, presenting with stroke-like symptoms. I called my friends who were doctors, and I said, hey, this is what's happening. They said, take him to the hospital immediately. An ambulance came, took him to the hospital. A healthcare worker told us that his heart was beating at 23 beats per minute, and he needed a pacemaker as soon as possible. My grandfather at that point began regaining consciousness, and he said, "How much is this going to cost me?" And a person came with a sheet of paper and said, $300,000. At that point, my grandfather said, "Absolutely not. I'm not going to put my children or grandchildren in debt just to live maybe an extra 2 to 3 years." And at that point, I was able to get him the health care that he needed. But I thought to myself, how many people ask themselves that question and end up walking out of that hospital? No one should be able to make life-threatening decisions just because of financial insecurity. No one should have to sleep on the streets because they're in financial distress or in a mental health crisis. My campaign is about human dignity, and it's about ensuring that you have a voice and that you're well represented, not the special interest groups, not the corporate interests, that we stand on the belief that humans are valuable and that you have rights and that you come first above anything else. And that's what I will always stand for, and that's what I'm always about. That's what my career has been about, from the classrooms to the courtrooms to tech, and now hopefully in Congress. Thank you.
You do have a lot of great folks on the stage tonight. I know a lot of us have actually become friends through this process. Joby and I just wrote a climate paper together. So I think this district's very lucky in that regard. So I'll go ahead and point to, I think, something that matters as you take a thoughtful choice on who you're going to give your endorsement to. And I think you can find the answer in our wonderful member of Congress, Anna Eshoo, who retired at 82. Why did she do that? Was it that she loved power? No. Was it that she didn't have great folks waiting in the wings? She did, right? Was it that she liked spending time in DC as opposed to here? She came back here as often as she could. So why did she do that? She did that because it takes years to accumulate this seniority, the relationships, and the committee assignments to make a difference for the people of this district. So as I think about stepping forward and spending time away from my family, why am I willing to do that? It's because I have the relationships on the Capitol Hill. I have the bipartisan track record of helping to pass over 150 pieces of legislation on Capitol Hill, because I could get on the right committee assignment while everyone else is building seniority this upcoming year to make a difference for this district right away. And to do those things that we talked about, like funding the Army Corps of Engineers to take care of the coast here, or increasing the size of the Uniform Public Health Corps to help with our school systems, these things that are crucial to our community. I'm from here, right? Not just this district, but I'm from this county. And I'm raising my kids here. This is where I built a business from. I love this place. And that's why I'm stepping forward to fight for it, because I know I can make a difference, and I can make a difference right away. Thank you so much.
Tyler, Barbara, and all the Coastside Democrats, I just want to say thank you for all your work in convening us, bringing us together today for this important conversation. Half Moon Bay and the Coastside is a delightfully unique place. I know you've heard that before, but you also have very unique needs, and I think it's natural for you to ask of me or anyone up here, is this person really going to care about us? Are they going to fight for us? And I imagine that's a unique concern since I represented a large city. The question will be, will I care enough and fight for what you need here? We've talked about farm workers. We haven't even talked about the many workers in the fishing industry that are struggling so much. The need for affordable housing for so many, for teachers for so many, and obviously the very serious infrastructure needs. I have a record of fighting for underserved communities. I've demonstrated that time and time again. In my public service, I've mentioned my work, for example, in leading an effort to bring a housing measure that would provide nearly $100 million a year for affordable housing and homeless needs, fighting for the boldest gun violence prevention measure in the country, fighting for the extension of broadband to more than 200,000 residents in the poorest parts of my city. Let me talk about other challenges that you've had here in Half Moon Bay, for example. Chop Keenan and the Beechwood development nearly actually did bankrupt this city more than a decade ago. Chop Keenan brought a billionaire developer to San Jose, wanted to build thousands of luxury homes in our hillsides where we were trying to protect for open space. We took on Chop Keenan. We fought him and the billionaire, and with the help of a lot of neighborhood organizations and environmentalists, we won that battle, even though they outspent us $6 million to 1. We fought 3 times for those measures against developers who wanted to build in our open spaces and our hillsides. And each time we won. I will fight for you.
Thank you, Sam. A quick note, I want to first of all thank each and every one of the candidates who came here today. Please. If I may indulge in a small editorial of my own, I am a professional constituent. This is what I vote for a living. One of you is going to go on, great. I want the rest of you to remain in public service, please. You are a fantastic group of people, and I think you all have wonderful things to bring to the table. A quick reminder to everyone, all the candidates have information in the back of the room, including questionnaires that they filled out at our behest, other information that they provided, and so please avail yourselves of that, but don't get up yet. I'm turning it back over to Barbara, and we're going to do a little central committee thing. Flip it up, just flip it up, sorry.
Hi, everyone. I thought it was great. I'm so excited about this. If you can just stay in your seats for 5 more minutes. We have 2 candidates for the Democratic Central Committee here, and they're each going to speak briefly, like 1 minute each. So if we can have April and Marianne come up. I want to do that before everybody gets up and moves away, because these people are also working hard and running to represent us, something as Democrats that's important for us. You want to go first, Marianne? You're here.
Marianne, would you like to go first? Okay.
It might be 2 minutes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, wait, let me get my thing going. Hi, my name's Marianne Moise. I live in Portola Valley. I am running on a slate with April Vargas, Victoria Sanchez de Alba, and Helen Walter. I served on the Portola Valley Town Council from 2005 to 2022. And during that time, I also served on many county boards and committees, including the library JPA. I was on the board when you finally built your gorgeous library here. I was on CCAG, City County Association of Governments, One Shoreline, Hart Housing Trust, Commute.org, and a bunch more. I am a lifelong Democrat, and I served on the Central Committee in North County in the late 1980s. I'm currently an alternate for Helen Walter, so I've been attending meetings and working on committees. And I am an elected ADM delegate in D23 with Julie, Aisha, I think Carrie's here somewhere, yeah. So I know how the Central Committee works, I know how the Dems work, I know how the county works, I know the people, I know the communities, I know the critical issues we face in our district. And as a worker bee person who puts people before politics, I get things done. But the primary reason I chose to work with the Democrats and run for the Central Committee during this new, perhaps last working phase of my life is because nothing is more important right now in America than keeping the presumed Republican nominee out of the White House. Nothing is more important. Nothing is more important than retaining the Senate, taking the House. Nothing is more important than electing good Dems up and down the ballot. To witness what is happening right now in this country is bone-chilling. Consider the last week, the IVF ruling in Alabama, Republicans taking hostage of the Ukraine funding package, the MAGA Republican reaction to Navalny's murder. If we care about democracy, if we care about civil rights for women, people of color, the LGBT community, I'm sorry, the elderly, children, the working poor, if we care about passing things like common sense gun laws, fighting climate change, addressing residential segregation, and a litany of other core values we believe in as Democrats, then we need to organize and do whatever is necessary to elect Democrats right now. That is what I commit to do, whether or not I am elected, actually, but it would be better to be elected. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm April Vargas. I live in Montera, and I agree with everything she just said. I'm here because I'm an organizer. Since the time I was in college, we saw what had to be done, and we worked together to get it done. That's the thing about community work that I love. It brings out the best in everyone, and it shows us strengths that we didn't know we had. I'm running for the Central Committee, and I'll tell you in a minute what we do. We're elected members from our communities, and we are the local county arm of the state Democratic Party. We do outreach, we make endorsements, which many members of this current city council know about, because when we endorse somebody, we go out, we work for them, we make phone calls, we walk precincts, and we let the community know what's at stake. We do voter registration. Many of us are at the Pumpkin Festival every year, not only registering voters, but letting people know politically what's important and how to get involved. Right now, my latest adventure is Vota Central Valley, where locally, through the San Mateo County Democratic Party, where I am an elected member, we are helping Bay Area residents from safe blue districts travel to the Central Valley, so that one of these fine people who gets elected will have 2 more Democratic colleagues in the House. You all can help with this, and I would like nothing better than to get your vote, but also for you to come up to me later and say, how can I get involved in this? Because let's face it, folks, the way we win is to get involved, and we win it together. So I would love to have your vote, and please also vote for my colleague, Victoria Sanchez de Alba, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because she's really ill, but she was the one that started the first in the state the Farm Worker Affairs Committee, and we have done incredible work with the city and with our local elected representatives. Who you vote for matters, so vote for me, April Vargas, Victoria Sanchez de Alba, and Marianne Moises. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for staying seated and everything so we could hear those really important talks as well. So club members now have an opportunity to fill out their ballot and get it in the ballot box in the next few minutes. And then we will have a little hospitality. There's some beer and wine and soft drinks over there while we wait for the tally to come out. I just want everyone to give a big thank you, first of all, to Pacific Coast Television for coming in and recording this for us. And then a big round of applause for all of our volunteers who helped today. Our timer, Tyler, our check-in volunteer people. It couldn't have been done without you all, and thank you all for coming and caring about this, and go Democrats.